All right. Well, it's 11:01, so let's get started. Ami, welcome to the Rental Roundtable. You're our 10th guest, so it's sort of a milestone for us. Thanks for being on here.
I'm happy to be here. So how's everybody doing?
We're doing good. People are still trickling in. So just for everyone who's joining, to be interactive, I'll ask a lot of questions, but feel free to chat in any questions people have. For people listening, which is a lot of the audience on Spotify or watching on YouTube later on. Ami's been in the finance industry for over 20 years. Worked with the New York Times, Huffington Post, Wall Street Journal, Entrepreneur Magazine, Forbes, Fox Business News. Also advised the White House, Federal Reserve Bank, and Treasury Department on credit markets. So an awesome guest for us today, but particularly for the audience joining, it's also very specific to the equipment rental industry. I mean, my understanding you've worked with a lot of rental companies as well.
Happy to be here, and thanks everyone for joining, and happy to answer any of your questions. And encourage anybody, don't be shy. Put your questions in the chat or raise your hand. As interactive as we can make this, the better and the more value we can provide for you. So
great. Well, just the icebreaker, Ami, it's yesterday's Halloween. First of all, did you have a costume, or if not, what was the best costume you saw yesterday?
I did not have a costume, but I'll tell you a funny story about my favorite Halloween costume ever. I used to be a Freudian slip for Halloween, and I had a T-shirt of a picture of Sigmund Freud on it, and I used to borrow my mother's slip, and that's how I would used to go around for Thanksgiving. And once I was dating a woman who was living with her very large family, and I was picking her up to go to a Halloween party, and I made her promise me that when I picked her up, I wouldn't have to go and see her whole family in my mother's slip, and sure enough, I did.
There you go. Did you have to explain the costume to people, or people get it pretty quickly?
I had explained it a few times, but I thought it was funny. So
I watched one of the Office Halloween episodes yesterday, and Oscar was the rational consumer, and he just looked like a normal person. And he had to keep explaining to people. People were like, "I don't really get the rational consumer." But yesterday, our whole family was aliens, so a little bit easier to get. Well, again, as I mentioned, people can chat in questions, but to start off, Ami, and I've got your book here, obviously author of The Growth Dilemma. We'll leave that in the chat for people to see. But in the context of an equipment rental business, the first topic is around scale, right? There's different ways to grow your business. Can you talk just at a high level? If I'm an owner of a small equipment rental business, what are my options as I think about growing my business?
Well, everyone should, in my opinion, find their own comfort level that's going to let them sleep at night in terms of how they choose to scale and grow and how fast they want to grow their business. So we all have our own risk tolerance. Being in the equipment rental business by its nature is a capital intensive business. So if you're afraid of debt, it's probably not a great industry for you to be in. Okay. What I always try to do is really get clarity on what your goals are and then what your plan is to get there. So if you're a $1 million company in sales today, and I'm just making that up as a random number, and your goal is to be a $10 million company in 3 years, well, then you need to make a plan to grow from 1 to 10, and you need to make a capital structured plan to grow from 1 to 10. You might be very happy running a $1 million company and be happy to grow at 5% a year. That's okay too. Everyone grows at their own rate and their own pace. So trying to get a clear vision about what it is you're trying to build, realize that the faster you grow, the more risk that comes involved in that. And so you have to be comfortable with that also. I'm not a believer that everyone has to grow. And I certainly discourage everybody from just concentrating on top line growth. I think that's a terrible mistake. You have to grow on a solid foundation and profitably. And if you're going to use debt, which most people do in the equipment rental business just by the nature of it, you have to structure in a way that will help facilitate your growth and let you sleep at night.
Not like it's a personal thing. You got to understand what you want first of all, and then match your capital structure to that.
What's your goal? It doesn't have to be 100% growth a year. Maybe it is. Maybe you want to conquer the world. Maybe you want to own the equipment rental business in your state. Maybe you're happy with your store. Maybe it's what kind of work-life balance you want. And there's no judgment on it, no matter what it is, but don't necessarily just to try copy the Joneses. Like, be who you want to be. We don't all need to be or have to be or want to be like the next Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or whatever. Pick your goal, pick what's comfortable with you, pick what will work with the life you want to live, and then make choices around that. But when you don't have a goal and you're willow-walling around, you're not sure where you're going and you're making impulsive decisions, it's much more difficult.
Yeah. And it also sounds like just growing just to grow and focus on top line, unless that's a conscious decision you've made, that can also be a pretty common pitfall you see.
I see it. I mean, as we're recording this, and I'm not sure that everybody everybody who's here might be listening to later. As we're recording this, the Inc. 5000 conference is going on in somewhere in Texas. And in my mind, that award makes no sense. So celebrating fastest top line growth is not something we should celebrate. Okay. Celebrating sound business, profitable businesses, healthy entrepreneurs, healthy communities, entrepreneurs who can actually sleep at night, et cetera, et cetera. These are the types of things that where I think we can actually, do well.
Do you think, the raising interest rates and everything that's happening right now, do you think that will move the needle more towards profitable, sustainable growth? Like, where did we go wrong as a country where we celebrate? I worked at Uber for several years, and that was the sort of the pitfall of just grow at all costs, really. And they've sort of now have been turning around on that. But where did we go wrong with that, I guess, as an economy? And do you think these interest rates rising, are we starting to move more towards let's build really solid companies, not just companies that grow really fast and burn a lot of money?
I don't think interest rates will have anything to do with it. It's capitalism. It's the chase. It's the chase of the unicorn. It's the chase of the big growth. It's the image we put into kids at Shark Tank, which encourages it encourages this whole element of you need this great famous investor. We're going to scale. We're going to grow. We're going to grow. We're going to go. Slow down, folks. Slow down. Take a breath. Who do you want to be? What kind of business do you want? If you want to go, do it. Great. But there are other ways to go about it, if that's what you choose. We came up with a system, and we can share the link. I think it's on our website if you like, called Entretypes, where we have, we sort of built like a Myers-Briggs for entrepreneurs. And we came up with 8 different personality types for entrepreneurship. And the theme of it really is just be who you want to be who you are. You don't have to be everybody or anybody. You can just be who you are and who you want to be.
I like that. I mean, this is a financial topic, but we're talking about the emotions and being who you are.
It's all interrelated. I post when I speak a picture of a confused woman, and it shows the left side and the right side of her head. Okay. And as you're making decisions about investing in your business or starting a new business or growing a business or whatever it is, you do that as a combination. It's your left side and the right side of your brain that go to work. They're your feelings and your emotions and your egos and your historical experiences with money on one side. And then there are where the spreadsheets and the models and the forecasts and the projections. And you kind of mix it up in the mixer and you make different decisions at different times. But recognize it's complicated.
It's complicated, and there's a left brain and a right brain interacting, and sometimes it's not just black and white. There's an emotional internal piece that's driving some of these things too.
100%. I tell the story one time. I think I tell it in the book, but one time I had a entrepreneur who needed a loan. He ran a cleaning company in California, and I got him I helped to get him a offer for an SBA loan. It was a 10-year SBA loan at 6% that involved a lien on his house. And the monthly payment was reasonable and affordable, and he could have pushed through his business. And for whatever his reasons were, and I still don't know them, he said to me, Ami, hell or high water, no lien on my house. It was a non-negotiable for him. And at that time, it was soon after the Great Recession, the only other offer we could get him was a 1-year loan at 36% interest with a personal guarantee. And you know what he took?
Took that personal guarantee loan?
He took the 1-year loan at 36% interest.
Yeah.
And
so go ahead.
He ended up bankrupt a few years later. And that's the juxtaposition of that left side of the right side of the brain, and it gets confusing sometimes.
Yeah. And I think it's okay for people to be different and have different feelings and how they want to live. But I think recognizing it, you have to recognize it. If you don't recognize it, it can sort of take control, and you may make suboptimal decisions for yourself. That's what it sounds like you're saying. We've got a few questions, actually. I'm going to jump in and sort of pivot here. One question from Derek. This is, you mentioned the regional aspect. Looks like he lives in New England. Question is, what are some suggestions for equipment rental business owners for winter revenue increases in cold climates like New England? So this is sort of a tactical, maybe equipment rental operating question, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts on slower months, colder climates. How does an entrepreneur sort of get through those seasons?
I think there are a couple answers to that. One of the answer is that every business should have a line of credit. There's seasonality, there's working capital, and there's emergencies that come up. And so especially if you know that your business is going to go through peaks and valleys, like an equipment rental business is in the East Coast, and you could have a great winter or a shitty winter, you absolutely should have a line of credit. And I like to see lines of credit at around 10% of top line sales. And the story of the line of credit I give is that there are two types of businesses. One is just running by on a shoestring, not paying much attention to accounting and bookkeeping, and which is all a pain in the rear end, and keeping up on taxes and keeping all their filings and not worrying about a line of credit or this or that. And and when they do file their taxes, they're doing a lot of commingling their funds and trying to save every penny of taxes that they can. That's the one other entrepreneur. The other entrepreneur or owner or operator is diligent about keeping their finances in order and their bookkeeping in order and their practices in order. What happens so think about those two entrepreneurs, okay? The story I'm giving is of a pizza owner, shop owner on the New Jersey shore in the middle of summer. It's the high heat of season, and his air conditioning unit blows on Friday, and he needs 50 grand by Monday to replace it. And every day he doesn't do it, it's a massive wham on his shop. And that guy doesn't have a line of credit. And he calls me and he says, Ami, I need 50 grand on Monday. What does that lender smell?
Fear, desperation.
Blood and desperation. You never want to be in a situation, if you can help it, where a lender smells blood and desperation. And so what I would say to you about that is get a line. It's like an insurance policy. Get a line. And your bank's not willing to give you a line. Figure out why. What's going on in your bookkeeping, in your accounting, your reporting that you don't get a line. That's the one piece I have to be answered. The other piece is think about investing in a side business that will diversify your revenue. Okay, that will help you deal with that expected valley in revenue, whether you get into snowplow removal or whatever it is. I don't know the details, but I'm sure there are other examples of what other equipment rental businesses have done to get a counter-cyclical business in the middle from winter.
I like it. So 2 recommendations: get a line of credit, and best time to do it is when you don't need it. So my dad always said, best time to look for a job is when you have one, right? Because you're not as desperate. 10% of top line sales is sort of a rule of thumb you're mentioning, and then also diversified revenue. What I've seen rental companies, a lot of the people on the call know this, but getting into repair, service and repair, right? Because that's not as cyclical. It's related to your business. It's not totally separate, but it doesn't follow the same patterns that a rental revenue would follow.
100%. There is something to be said about a diversification paradox, right? So we're in the equipment rental business. When things are great, when weather's great, when the economy is great, we're booming. But when an economy slows down or when weather sucks, things really can hit a wall. So are there things you can do? Every business, are you following a niches to riches strategy? Or do you want to take some effort and energy in the investments you're deciding to make and invest them in some diversification efforts? That's a personal choice, but something that I think everyone needs to think about.
And what is the niches to riches strategy? What does that mean exactly?
Well, so take my example. I make 95% of my revenue from helping entrepreneurs place SBA loans. And 95% of that time, I get paid a commission from a lender for bringing them that loan because the government allows that to happen. And I've spent the greater part of 12 years building my company and my team great knowledge and great expertise in that. So there's a risk, though, for me of one day if someone decides to change that rule for whatever reason, saying lenders can't do that anymore. They can't pay commissions to brokers for getting a loan. I'll have a massive problem on my hands. So I've followed a niches to riches strategy. We said we're totally focused on being really good and really experts at this. Perhaps I should take 10 or 20 or 30% of my energy and add a different element to my business. So there's something else. It's like you could have equipment rental and maybe you should start a party side. Or you have equipment rental, maybe you should start a snowplow removal business. If you were in COVID and you owned a dozen or 24 hotels, and then COVID hit, suddenly you were screwed. Or gyms, everything was one in one bucket. So do you want to diversify or do you want to stay focused? It's a personal decision, but a decision I think everybody should think about.
And make consciously. Like it's sort of the themes here, right? Just be thoughtful and be intentional about why you're making decisions. Don't just do things to do things, right? Don't just grow to grow. Another follow-up question from Derek, which is, I can imagine it's probably not your favorite question because reality is no one knows, but the question is around projections of the economy. So what is your projection of the economy and the impact this may have on the equipment rental industry in particular? Who knows, but interested in your thoughts on that.
I have no idea.
Me neither.
I do think we all should recognize that we are living through an unprecedented time in history. There is no playbook for what's going on right now. There's no time in history that I'm aware of. And it feels like 20 years ago, but it was 3 years ago, whatever it was, where governments around the world printed trillions and trillions of dollars to keep people alive, to keep people off hunger lines, and to keep banks open. And the world and the economy is still shifting from it. It's funny, but it's not funny. I check my Facebook memories every day. And yesterday something popped up. I'd gone to Costco for my wife, and 5 things she had asked for, 4 of them were out of stock. And it seemed like that was the biggest problem in the world. Now at Costco, or a year ago, they're all there, but they're like 30% more expensive. Now there's other problems in the world, major political problems in the world. And so where it's all going to play out and how this is going to go, the way I deal with it is I just focus on what I can control. Because there is so much there's so much stuff going on and so many forces, health, political, social, economic. It's really, really hard to tell. I could be wrong. I just try to ignore all the noise and keep about doing the things that I can control.
Yeah. Well, that's fair. And with all the uncertainty, I think it probably makes some of these things you're talking about even more important, the lines of credit, getting those in place now, because maybe things are hunky-dory, but if they're not, you want to be prepared, it sounds like.
Financing strategy is a little bit like preparing a football team for a game. And no football team's going to win a game without good offense and defense. Okay. So on the defense, you have to be ready for the unexpected. And to me, that means having the biggest line you can get available if you need it. And on the offense, all the change in the world also brings about opportunities. And you have to be best as prepared as possible to jump on those opportunities as they make sense. So think about that, and think about structuring your balance sheet in a way that you're best prepared for all the uncertainty and all the opportunities that the uncertainty creates.
I like it. And I think football analogy, I think most people, if you're a football fan, it is unexpected. You don't know what the play is going to be unless you're University of Michigan. It sounds like you may know what's going on. All the sign stealing stuff that's come out. We got a couple more questions. If it's okay with you.
Of course, I love the questions. Let's go.
How much debt is okay or healthy for the equipment rental industry? Are there any general rules we can build a growth plan around?
Let me just show you the way I think about it. It's not about the debt. It's about the monthly payment. Okay. And then how comfortable are you with that monthly payment? So if you're going to say making a choice of buying, I'm going to make it up, $300,000 worth of equipment, and you have 2 choices, different choices about how to finance it at different rates, don't pay attention to the rate, pay attention to the monthly payment. And then whatever the monthly payment is, let's say it's $5,000. What bad could happen and what good could happen? So if that's equipment that you just bought sits on the shelf forever because it was just a bad buy, can you handle that $5,000 a month payment without causing too much bodily damage to yourself? And then what good could happen? So I don't think about it as much as the debt, the amount of debt, as I think about it as the monthly debt service. And if you feel that is something that you can sleep with.
So that essentially is your general rule. It's really around the monthly payment, making sure you can stomach that without doing real harm, but also you got to think about the upside too. Like it's not just paying down debt. There should be a positive offset, right? And
there should be 3 scenarios. Let's say if I buy that piece of equipment and I rent it out every day, it'll be paid for in a year. Okay. If I buy that piece of equipment and it sits on the shelf and there's zero demand for it, my monthly payment is $5,000 for 5 years. Those are the worst case and the best case scenarios. Likely what's going to happen is probably something in the middle. Okay. But at least by getting that sense of that is a way to think about it. But the monthly payment is really important. Remember, financing strategy also about giving yourself the most flexibility. Maybe it's worth it to pay 2 extra points in interest rate to have a monthly payment that's 40% lower, especially if there's no prepayment penalty. And if you want to pay it off faster, you can.
Yeah, I like the flexibility piece, especially with all the uncertainty that you just said, right? Who knows what's going to happen? Having flexibility is maybe more important than other times.
Correct. It's like insurance. Sometimes I meet people who don't have a line of credit, and I go, "Do you have life insurance?" Right? Wouldn't you rather? They say, "Oh, we've had no problems for years." Well, if COVID hit and there was no PPP, what would you do? I'm trying right now to help a bunch of companies in Israel, and the war has just hit in Israel. There's no PPP. You have to think about.
Yeah, I wonder if the correlation of people who don't have lines of credit and don't have life insurance. Like, wonder if there's a correlation there or not, but separate.
That's
separate project.
Interesting study for another day. So.
I got another question from Ziad, who's actually a Quipli customer. He's in a colder climate. So his question is, when you say diversification, you recommend in the same line of business or something different? Could opening a new location in a warmer climate be considered diversification?
Sure, that's a personal choice. Okay. So I'm not recommending anything. I'm recommending you think about it as part of your risk tolerance. Okay. So yes, if you open a new location in a warmer climate and it's exactly the same business you're in, you've de-risked the geography. Okay. But if the economy hits hard and impacts the equipment rental business at the same time, both companies could be hurt. Okay. If you choose to go into a completely different business, maybe you've put risk on your focus because you have to learn something entirely new. Okay. And this is the balancing act that's difficult.
Yeah. I mean, like, just to make sure I understand, the niches to riches strategy, you go really deep and you do really well at one thing. You typically beat your competitors because you've sort of focused on something really good. The downside is you are totally beholden to that. And if some macro event happens, which hurts that particular segment, right, you are crushed. The diversification strategy, you're not as good as many things, but you can sort of diversify against any one sort of major hit, right? And it's sort of what you're saying, it's a personal choice to figure out where on that scale you want to be.
You always have to think about it like the question is, what could bring your business to its knees? Every one of us has something that could bring our business to its knees. Okay, so we did that assessment in our company a few months ago. There are some few things that could bring our business to its knees that are out of our control. And there are a few things that we decided could bring our business to its knees that are in our control. Like we're going through a major initiative now to completely upgrade all of our cybersecurity stuff and our controls and stuff, because we have a lot of people's personal business information. So God forbid one day if we get hit, at least we'll know we did everything we can in our control to fix it. But something like that could destroy our reputation like really, really, really quickly. So trying to understand these things that could bring your business to its knees, which is never a fun thing to think about. And then making decisions about what you're going to do, how risky those things are, and what you're going to do to control them is very helpful.
It sounds like what you're comfortable with. What can you sleep with at night? Everything, there's risk in everything. Go to zero. But what are you personally comfortable with?
Risk in every single thing we do. Absolutely.
Yeah. I got another question from the audience. What are the best strategies to source funds when you are ready to execute on more growth in the rental industry? Any advice for finding and filtering sources for more capital?
I'm not here to sell. You can always call us. Okay.
Sell me right now. I want to hear the pitch. What services do you offer?
We help entrepreneurs and business owners all the time. We're not one lender. We don't have one source. So we'll evaluate a situation and help them think through the different pros and cons of the different alternatives to help them grow. And then if they want to help, we'll help them secure that financing. But it's what do you want? It's first of all, what's your bigger plan? Where are you trying to get to in 3 or 5 years? And then the investments that are necessary to get there. And then in my mind, choosing the capital structure to make those choices that gives you the most flexibility. Oftentimes that can be the SBA because it gives you 10 years to pay it off. Not all the time, but oftentimes.
In your experience working with equipment rental companies, which you do have a lot of experience with, every situation is different. I understand that. But do you typically push people down, not push, but recommend the SBA route? Is that sort of, if you had to have a simplified, like what do you see most common for equipment rental companies who want to grow? Is it typically through debt? Is it typically through SBA loans?
Some of it depends on the size and shape of the company and where they're at in their development cycle, and how clean the quality of their books are and how much debt they have. Sometimes we do a recapitalization. We'll recap a ton of equipment and put it on one SBA note on a 10-year term, and it dramatically lowers the monthly payment. And that can be very helpful. So people could have 8, 10, 12, 15 different notes, and we smush those all together into one note with one monthly payment. That can be a little bit difficult when you want to sell equipment, buy equipment. There could be some back-end complications, but sometimes the cash flow savings are worth it. Sometimes if somebody just wants an injection of a couple $100,000, you can then they keep all their debt intact. And if you do an SBA loan of $350,000 or less, sometimes you can get that as a cash injection. And then they will use that money to buy whatever equipment they want. And the SBA won't put a lien specifically on that specific pieces of equipment. And sometimes the SBA doesn't make sense at all. Sometimes it's a straight line, it's straight equipment rental, equipment leasing or whatever. Irrespective of all that, we think the businesses should have a line of credit and a good relationship with a bank. And maybe even more importantly, to be able to get all this, have good, clean accounting systems and be up to date on your taxes. Again, if you can't get a loan, and it's hard to get a loan, it's usually a reason.
And what are those reasons usually?
There's bunches of them, but poor accounting and bookkeeping, it could be one of them. It could be it could be a lot of commingling of funds. So you don't want to pay taxes. So you're pushing a lot of personal expenses into your business. So you're not showing any profitability. And that gives the lender pause. It could be you're running your business out of your shoebox and you have no idea or no control of how you're making money or where you're making money. Or it could be you're growing so quickly that you're focused on top line growth and not profitability. Whatever it is, slow down, take a pause. Like, where are you going? What are you trying to accomplish? What do you want to be when you grow up? These are all very important questions.
What about the other side of the coin? We haven't really talked about, which is taking on not debt, but maybe equity investments. Have you seen that in the equipment rental industry at all? And when would that be an option for an owner to consider?
I think anytime you're looking for a capital infusion, you can and should think about the pros and cons of debt versus equity. And there are some times where one is clearly more appropriate or the other. There might be times in the cycle where you're not going to be able to raise the debt that you need, and equity is really your only choice. Just keep in mind, though, that if you take on an equity partner, the game is different from that minute on. you just got married or married again, and you have someone else at the table making decisions with you. And you have to think that through carefully and decide if that's what you want. How important is control to you in your business? Sometimes you actually don't need as much money as you think you do. And that's tied to like this whole thing of like trying to build the next unicorn. Maybe you just don't need as much money as you think you do. I often tell the story of one time in early on in the business, a woman called me, and of all things, I think I tell the story in the book, Kyle. She had invented the world's greatest horse shampoo, and some jerk off had taken the only $40,000 she had to her name to write a business plan that, if I printed it out, would probably weighed about as much as my newborn at the time. Okay, to raise $5 million. She was convinced she needed $5 million to buy her building and her equipment and hire her management team and do all these things. And I asked her, have you sold anything yet? Have you actually sold this stuff? And the answer was she hadn't sold anything yet, but she was convinced in her head that she needed $5 million to get going. Really, what she needed to do was go find a co-packing facility and start knocking on doors and see if people liked it. I told her that. She didn't like what I said. I never heard from her again. I can't imagine she raised the $5 million. Sometimes you don't need as much money as you think you do. One of the things that makes me mad about Shark Tank is I wish there was a lender on there or an SBA lender. So saying, instead of giving Mr. Jerk, wonderful Mr. Jerk, or whatever you want to call him, 35% for that $500,000, we'll lend it to you. Here are the terms. It's a 10-year term. Your monthly payment is $6,000, and we're taking a lien on your house. And if it doesn't work, we have the option to take your house. Now make your decision. That would reflect a much more, in my opinion, realistic choice of the choices that entrepreneurs face.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is there are pros and cons to debt and equity, but typically owners have options. It's not just one or the other, and they need to think through all the options right?
There's usually more than one way to skin a cat. Another story I tell is, and it's sort of a joke, but it's meant to be true. If you're in a hurry and you go to McDonald's for lunch, you'll have indigestion for a few hours, but then you'll be over it. If you're in a hurry and you make a dumb financing decision, you could have indigestion for a few years or ruin your business or ruin your personal financial situation. Slow down and take a breath. There are almost always more than one way to skin a cat. Get different opinions and then make the best choice for you.
Another plug in your book, The Growth Dilemma, I read, which I encourage everyone to read on the call. It took in my view, I think you talked a lot about the benefits of debt and a lot of the options there and pros and cons of debt and equity. But what would be the pros for taking on equity investment in the equipment rental industry? Like, I know all the pitfalls. You lose control. You maybe don't actually need as much money as you think. When would an equipment rental owner, when would it make sense for them to take on other owners, other private equity investment?
If the amount, two things. Is there a equity partner that you're comfortable to be in bed with and you believe firmly is going to share the same vision with you about where the company is going to go, and you've thought through and you understood that there will be good and bad times along the journey, then yeah, the equity partner might be great. And or is the amount of money you need at that amount of risk in terms of debt going to give you so much personal agita that you're not going to sleep at night? Which is fine. It's not binary. It's not that equity never makes sense. I just encourage you to think about it back to that point of more than one way to skin a cat, and then make the choice that's best for you.
It sounds like the pros on equity would be less personal liability. If you have an amazing partner, it actually could be a value to your business, but it's got to be an amazing partner. And more than anything, it's making sure you avoid a partner that's not going to ruin the relationship, ruin the company, take it in a different direction, right? You don't see that with debt, it sounds like.
Yeah, unless the bank starts taking over your business, then you see it with debt, right? Think about, like some of it I call like the private equity myth, right? Oh my God, this is freaking amazing. Private equity bought my company, or private equity bought 60% of my company, or whatever it is. Well, guess what? You just put your business on their treadmill, and they're going to have certain expectations of what will happen into the business in the next 3 years around the financial returns that they need to see. Okay. And they're going to lever up, and they're going to push hard, which is totally fine if that's the lifestyle that you want, or that's what you want for your business. But it's not necessarily the best thing for you. It's really who you are and what it is you're trying to build.
Yeah. Right. And I like your push. Like if you take out the Inc. 5000, if you take out Shark Tank, if you take out the glorification of private equity, take all that out, what is the best thing for you personally? And I think it sounds like debt is often overlooked, and because of all those other shiny objects that are out there, right?
Correct. Or people just don't understand it, or people don't know how to use it, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. We got another question from someone. What are the business metrics that are most relevant for measuring success and growth in the equipment rental business? Is there a specific number or percentage I should be monitoring that most small rental business owners are unaware of?
My answer is probably different than other people's answer. Okay. And it's softer and maybe more ambiguous. Okay. But I don't care. The answer is the growth rate that's going to let you sleep at night. Okay. So it's a personal decision. Okay. Sorry, Dan Crowley or some of the other gurus out there. Okay. It's if you want to grow 10 or 15%, and that's the amount of debt that you're comfortable with, and you can be profitable, and you can support your family, and you can support your needs at that, and you're good with that, then that's the right answer for you. Okay. If you have a bigger aspirations and you can tolerate the risk, and you want to grow at 100% a year, which means more debt, more equipment, more locations, more responsibilities, go for it. It's what you want. It's not what some metrics is telling you. Metrics answers one side of that image of the woman with, both sides of her head. It doesn't answer both. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me. I'm curious how you got to that point. Like you talk to a lot of people. I know Dan Crowley's great, right? Peer executive guy. Like everyone's got, growth this percent, these formulas and all these things. It's how you maximize your personal income, and it's like around how much money can you make a lot of times. How did you sort of get away from that more towards how do you sleep at night? How do you enjoy your quality of life? How do you sort of wake up every day energized and not, smoke coming out of your ears? How did you get there? Were you always like that, or what sort of led to that point of saying, hey, let's think about what's best for you?
I think it's just the pain I've seen over the years, and I've seen people, and unfortunately or fortunately or whatever, I know a lot of people's secrets. Okay. And so and I know what can happen and how difficult it can be. And so I recommend to people to just slow down. What do you want to be? What do you want to do? I know some guy right now is celebrating being number 250 on the Inc. 5000 list, and he's borrowing money at 68% APRs right now to sustain it. And he hasn't slept in a week, and I'm worried he's going to have a heart attack. Okay. I don't like watching people go through that pain. I don't. And
Sounds like it's decades of seeing the horror stories, and you're like, look, yeah, we can maximize more money, but that doesn't matter if you're not sleeping, if you're going to destroy your health, your mental health, physical health.
I found this image to put up for you. I don't know if people can see, Kyle. But
yeah. Left brain, right brain, left number, symbols, words, analysis, language, right brain, dreams, feelings, abstract, imagination.
We all mix it up. We make this, it's a combination of all this stuff, how we choose to make our choices. Maybe I'm going to make this my new Zoom background for a while. Thanks for the idea.
I'll take credit for it. And what, I mean, I was sort of surprised, to be honest, like, normally you talk to finance people, we talk more of the left side, numbers. Give me your formulas, give me your P&L. Let's talk about that. You're talking about the right side. It sounds like entrepreneurs typically underweight the right side. Is that a fair statement?
Or they realize they're making decisions with the right side without even thinking about the left side or any combination in the middle. The reality is you have to recognize that you have to make decisions with both, and you need to understand both, and then think about how they're counterbalancing each other and then make the choice that's right for you.
I like it. Last sort of topic I have here just around, was on the agenda, which is around, acquiring businesses, M&A, and just any experience you have with that in the equipment rental industry. I'm curious, like, if we've got some rental owners on the call, how would you advise them to think about that? And I think I sort of know the answer now a little bit more around, like, start with what you want first. But if someone does want to grow, they want to maybe diversify into other territories, which is what we've talked about, or they want to dominate the market more, be more of the market leader. Do you have any thoughts or advice for people thinking about making purchases and sort of going the M&A route?
Again, we think that the SBA is a great tool for the M&A route because it's 10-year money. And because if you're buying a business that's exactly like yours, you can do that as an expansion loan, and it can actually be 0% down. Okay. So we'd be happy to chat anybody through that with them if you like. The same principles apply about the risk and the payments and all that stuff. But the SBA, that we've done several of them in the equipment rental space. We've done 125 M&A transactions overall the last 2 years. Can be a tremendous tool to help with that all.
Of the roughly 125 M&A transactions, how many leveraged SBA loans? Half? More than half?
99%.
Okay. So almost every time, there's probably one or two that didn't happen.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well,
at least for the work that we do, right?
So, yeah. And just to wrap up here, what would be the best way for people to get in contact with you if they want to learn more about other strategies, getting particular advice on getting loans for their business?
Multifunding.com. My email is Ami. We can put it in the chat if you want to. Ami@multifunding.com. You can feel free to reach out to us. We have a daily blog called an Ami site. We have all kinds of different regular ongoing educational material we provide. And we're always happy to help our friends in the equipment rental industry at any time.
Great. Final question, just to wrap things up. What's your final piece of advice or thought as for an equipment rental owner thinking about funding strategies? If you had to put a bow on this conversation.
Where do you want to be 3 to 5 years from now? And what investments do you need to make to get there? And do you have the right capital structure in place to do that and work towards a goal?
I like it. Starting with what do you want? That's the summary here. Start with that and build around that.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for coming on, Ami. It's been great. I love the Zoom background. It's very fitting. Although the woman behind you, it's good that you're blocking her because it's not you. But
you mean I'm more attractive than her?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's distracting with you there. You're so attractive. Well, thanks everyone for jumping on and for listening at a later date. But Ami, it's been great having you on. Thanks for joining for our 10th episode, a milestone for us.
Awesome. Congratulations. And thank you everybody for joining. I hope it was helpful.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks everyone. Thanks, Ami.
Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.